We'll just take a few moments before they come up on the stage.
Actually start concentrating a lot more cautiously, but concentrating a lot more on that medium, you know. What was interesting to me was I remember being part of a conversation with
And yes, our Delhi Times Literature Festival, as we all know, has firmly established itself as we all know, has firmly established itself as we all know, has firmly established itself as we all know, has firmly bookstore Full Circle, who are also having their bookstore right outside near gate number 2. They have a proper bookstore, Full Circle bookstore, in case you are wanting to buy the books of the authors. They are available out there. You may kindly see them, check them, and buy them as well.
यूं ही नहीं मैं बन जाता हूं। कुदरत के कोने कोने से खूबियां खोज लाता हूं।
All right, ladies and
गुणवत्ता
gentlemen,
की गहराइयों का गोताखोर हूं।
we are ready. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome upon stage Mr. Vivek Agnihotri, a National Award-winning filmmaker, author, and public intellectual, who will be in conversation with Rahul Shivasankar, who began his journalism career over 2 decades ago as a beat reporter with Times of India, and he's currently leading the mantle at Times Now, and it has spanned both print and electronic media. And I hand over the floor to them.
Do we need to introduce Vivek Agnihotri? Who in this auditorium doesn't know him? Raise your hands. 2 people don't know who he is. Oh, you do know who he is. I said, raise your hands, those who don't know Vivek Agnihotri. That tells you something. It tells you that your reputation has preceded you because your work has preceded you. And that's absolutely fabulous, because he has done some very interesting work, and work which he believes captures reality. And today we're going to talk to Vivek Agnihotri about the art of filmmaking, why he made a film like Kashmir Files that a lot of us watched, and perhaps give us a very different perspective, not just of what actually happened, but also of our history and where perhaps we're headed and what are the challenges. So, good evening and welcome, Mr. Vivek Agnihotri. Give him a... That's right. Lovely seeing you, and you're working actually on a very interesting movie also, The Vaccine Wars. So tell us a little bit about that first, because not many people know this. What is the vaccine war?
First, thanks for inviting me. Is this working? Yeah, thank you. So thanks for inviting me. Thanks everybody for being here. It somehow happened that I got to meet few scientists, and they told me that they were behind making this vaccine, which India is very proud of. The world now is recognizing. And I said, I had no clue. I thought it was made by these big companies. But then I got to know that no, they are just the facilities where you bottle them and produce them, but the vaccine candidate was made inside the lab by these very ordinary looking, ordinary in today's terms, women. And does anybody know who made this vaccine? Can anybody tell me who made Covaxin? Not the brand, but the vaccine which is called Covaxin. See, this is the problem, and this is the problem. We do not know the real achievers of our country, so we had no clue. Second thing, and I'm not telling you more, actually it was National Institute of Virology and Indian Council for Medical Research. They are scientists, a very small team of 7, 8, 9 scientists who worked day and night, and all of them were women. In fact, 90% of them were women. And and the kind of women which the modern world says they are housewives. As they look at them, they say these are housewives, they are not empowered women. And so this film will tell you what actually women empowerment actually literally means. But besides that, India, when we were sitting at home, nobody realizes that India fought very big war. You know, and this was war at many fronts, not just economic, but social, cultural. But more than that, I had no clue that R&D is such a big industry, especially the biotechnology. The bio R&D in the world, because the entire pharma lobby depends on that. And the kind of diplomatic war India fought and won, I thought this story must be told, because this too, in my mind, is more important than, is as important as India-China war story or India-Pakistan war. I'm sure when the film comes on 15th of August, actually 11th of August, when you will see those 2.5 hours, आपके पाँव के नीचे से ज़मीन खिसक जाएगी ये देख के कि oh my God, I was sitting watching news every day, listening to people, and I had no clue this was happening behind the scenes. So it will make you very, very proud of modern India.
That's spectacular. I think these stories need to be told because very often the ordinary people behind great successes are never given their due, especially in countries that are developing, because obviously there are, let's just say, different things at work. Now, I want to focus on a couple of things. You always believe that a movie should also, at some level, demonstrate the reality around us. And you have commented that films like Pathaan, for example, that talk about nationalism, this, that, the other, sort of give it this patina of make-believe. It's not the real thing. And you've said that the Kashmir Files, which obviously turned controversial for some reasons and because certain people raised questions, needed to be told. That story needed to be told. What was this story? What was it that attracted you? Why did you make this movie? Many people say that you had an agenda, political agenda. You were furthering the cause of one particular vichardhara, as they say. It's propaganda.
See, it's only after the film released and became successful, I got to know there was a political agenda behind it. I had no clue. When we were making it, see, after things are completed, then there are many theories, and sometimes there is some scene in a film which becomes iconic, and then 100 stories come, oh, acha, ye aise hua tha. So, aisa kuch hota nahi hai. Sometimes things, the universe comes together to make things happen. And the same thing happened in case of the Kashmir. It just happened, I was in Houston once, and I met one doctor who's a Kashmiri Pandit himself, Dr. Surinder Kaul, perhaps one of the whose contribution to this activism is maximum in the world. And so he met me, he said, Vivek ji, would you be interested in making a small documentary on our issue? I said, yaar, dekho, documentary ka ye hai, I would love to make, but nobody watches documentaries. So he said, why don't you make a feature film? I said, who's going to watch this this film on Kashmir issue? So he said, ठीक है, इतने सारे लोग एक जगह से निकाल दिए जाते हैं. Everybody has these sorrow stories, you know. It happens all the time. This is the world. But nobody would be interested in this. He said, Vivek ji, if you are so socio-politically aware and if you are going to say something like this, which means we have no hope. And on my way back, I kept thinking about it a lot. When I came back, I started reading into it. I had no clue about Girja Tikku's story. I had no clue about Nadi Marg massacre. I didn't know. The only massacre I knew was 36 Sikhs who were killed in a row in I think 2000 or 2001, sometime around that time. And I knew that a lot of army exploits people, oppresses people, and there is no freedom. All those kind of narratives which have been presented to us throughout. And once I started digging into it, then I realized that when I grew up, when as a child, our neighbors were called and they were very good friends of ours. And I spent some 21 years playing with their children, going to their house. They were neighbors in Bhopal. immediate neighbors. I mean, we had the same wall. And we knew, my parents used to say, ये कश्मीरी लोग हैं, कश्मीर से आए हैं. But I never ever had any clue what happened with them. I said, let's talk to some Kashmiri Pandits, real Kashmiri Pandits who live in different cities now. And once we started doing that research, and I thought maximum we'll make some short film or a documentary. If worst comes, I'll write a small book or something. So I just started working on that. So my wife Pallavi and I, when we were researching, one common thread we found everywhere. Every Kashmiri Pandit family told us one thing, that nobody has heard our story. And I realized why nobody has heard their story, because nobody asked them. Like me, I had neighbors who were victims of this genocide, and I spent almost 21 years, and I'm still in touch with them. I never asked them, they never told us. And film में भी वही एक dialogue भी है film में, if you have seen the film, कि ये वो कहानी किसी ने पूछी नहीं, किसी ने बताई नहीं. And then I said it's very important that people must at least listen to this story. People must know, the younger generation know that yes, it wasn't far off. In 2003, 24 people were made to stand in a row, including one pregnant woman and 2 young kids, little kids, who don't know anything about the world, and they were shot point blank in broad daylight. I thought that this is one story the world must know. And that's how we got onto making this thing. And we didn't get any finance, no distribution. I mean, you know the story. I don't want to repeat it again and again. But everybody thought that this is unbelievable. But when we started showing the film around, it's overwhelming that the way people started receiving it. Because what happened, Rahul, we had heard these stories piecemeal, and nobody had connected them with one thread. This is what this film, and when you connect them with a thread, then the entire picture comes in front of you, and you say, oh my God, what kind of inhuman world we are living in. Film was never about community, it was against terrorism, it was anti-terrorism film. And the most of the film, if you honestly, as an honest viewer, if you see, 70 to 80% film talks about the inaction of not just the government, but also of the police, of the media, of social workers, or of NGOs. Every single agency put a blindfold and they ignored this. But then some vested interest came and started painting it like as if it had something to do with communities.
So let me ask you, you said that no one asked them the story, their story. Why do you think no one ever asked them their story?
There is a reason. See, there is a reason because any story to be heard, people have to tell that story, and second, in these kind of socio-political stories, there has to be some kind of an organization, activism, or somebody has to be interested in that. What happened that, though we say 19 January 1990, it's a symbolic date, but it's not that all Kashmiri Pandit left on 19 January. The process started sometime mid-80s and it went on till 93, 94, 95, I think, And then they were never centered in one place. They got scattered everywhere. कोई बच्चों को लेके पूना चला गया, somebody went to Bangalore, somebody went to Delhi, कोई जम्मू चला गया, some people who had cousins or somebody outside India, वहाँ चले गए. बहुत सारे लोग जो medical colleges में पढ़ रहे थे, a lot of them were doctors and engineers. Then they took a transfer from Srinagar Engineering College to Warangal or somewhere, so they got scattered. And then they got busy in rebuilding their lives, educating their children, finding houses, renting places, changing cities. So first, that's the first thing. If there's fire in your house, the first thing you want is how to get shelter for your children and all that. It's not that you immediately the first person you meet. And in the meantime, so much happened in India. Post-90s, if you see, the governments kept changing. There was no stability in the country. And then bigger issues which were Delhi-centric like Mandal, Kamandal and all those kind of issues came up, and this got ignored. It's not that we do not know about this issue. Media kept talking about it. It's not that the modern media, the media in last 10 years or so has spoken very, very widely about Kashmiri Pandit issue. A lot of people got voices. There are activists who are regular faces now. It's not that it did not happen, but nobody weaved the story similarly like India's partition story. I guarantee nobody in India knows India's partition story, except for historians and experts or some media people or academics. But average Indian, we have some idea. We have some idea because we have seen movies like Gadar or Gandhi, Humne Trainon Ka. That's all we know. But we don't know what was the real politics behind partition. We don't know what, when we say partition, close your eyes. The only thing you can think about is Pakistan on the west and Punjab on the east. That's all. That's the only imagery you have in your mind. When you think about partition, close your eyes, you see lots of Sikhs. You see Gandhi, you see Nehru, but the real players of partition, people who were catalysts, people who actually triggered the partition, this entire how Khilafat movement came. No, does anybody know who was the architect of Khilafat movement for which India was divided? Nobody has a clue. So there are so many stories because we never focused on education and see, when you say building a nation, it does not mean only building factories. You also have to build a narrative which is about your nation, about your country. In America, if you go, if you have your children or your cousins or somebody studying in, if you see these young kids, they know about all the amendments of the Constitution. They know everything about the founding fathers of their democracy. You ask them what happened about the Civil War, they know, because उनके दिमाग में घुसाया जाता है so that you don't repeat this again. The reason in India every 2, 3, 4 years something is repeating, we have riots or we have some kind of communal tension or everything boils down to communal issues. The reason is because we failed to teach our children, including us, our generation and this generation, next generation, about why India is the way India is. If you do not know about your parents, you will never ever be proud and you won't know what to change in next generation. I think that has been a sad commentary about Indian history.
Well, that's interesting. Obviously, the first time there was partition on the subcontinent was not in actually 47. Yeah. It was 1905, partition of Bengal. Yeah. And the movement for partition, the idea behind it, etc., came up much earlier. But, you know, when you tell a story, when you make a movie, especially one as important as the one that you have, did you think about what this was going to lead to? Did you have any ends for it in mind? Stories are told, of course, to tell the story, about give them a voice, but to what end? Did you have that? Or did you say, no, I just want to tell the story and whatever has to happen will happen?
Okay, so I have to give you a little background. You know, in 2010, I decided to shift from Bollywood kind of filmmaking to a different kind of filmmaking. And 2010 and 11, in that year, we made a film called Buddha in a Traffic Jam, which ultimately became a book called Urban Axles. And that film was stuck for 5, 6 years, but then we stuck to it. We had decided that we'll tell stories which everybody is scared to tell without box office implications. And then we said, one day we were sitting and we said, ये जो हमारा शेर है भारत का जो ये 3 शेर जो हैं ये हैं क्या? What do they represent? I mean, you can have 1 lion. Why do you have 3 lions over there? ऐसी बात का हंसी मजाक में we were sitting and we said, so I said, अच्छा, okay, what if one is right to truth and one is right to justice and the other is right to life? And that's how we decided to make this trilogy. I said, what are the fundamental pillars of a democracy? First, every citizen should have right to truth. So we made the first film called the Kashmir Files. It was obviously, it was about Lal Bahadur Shastri's death, but it was just a way of telling people that if you do not know the truth of India's second Prime Minister's death, then which means there is no hope as far as truth is concerned. The second film we made, Right to Justice, which is the Kashmir Files, and the third I'm making, Delhi Files, on Right to Life. So when we were making Tashkent Files, I had no clue that it will end up becoming one of the biggest hits of 2019. In fact, the biggest hit of 2019. That gave us a lot of confidence. And with, we said, okay, people are willing to watch such a complex, very intellectual kind of a film with no stars, no glamour, no songs, sitting in a dark room and just talking, that too about a politics which concerns nobody of 1964-65. And the reason the Tashkent Files, it's interesting, that's why I'm telling. So can I take just
Please.
1 minute? So the reason Tashkent Files got stuck for 2 years, if you do not know, it was stuck, it was canned, nobody was willing to release it, was because the Bollywood studios and everybody was saying that, मुझसे क्या बोलते थे कि तो आप सड़क पे जाइए किसी भी बच्चे से पूछ लीजिए, even you have kids, you ask them, they have no clue about Shastri. They don't know who is Lal Bahadur, and which is truth, which is true. Most of the kids had no clue about Lal Bahadur Shastri. And some people would tell me, "Arey, wo 4 foot ke kya? Who's going to?" And nobody realized that in the film it's not a biopic of Lal Bahadur Shastri. We never ever showed Lal Bahadur Shastri. We just discussed in a room about his death, and the film was endorsed. Maximum 80% of our audience consisted of women and young people. So then we realized that the way Bollywood thinks is not, they don't know the pulse of the audience, they have no clue. Their films work because of lot of hype. It's unbelievable, vulgar amounts of money which are spent on marketing. That's another subject we can discuss some other time. And most of the numbers are all fake and show off, and it's just to build the images of few stars. So much of drama is created. We said, let's get out of this. Let's make films which are very small budget and a very limited release, and the kind of films people want to see. So we have our own audience. And that gave us confidence in the Kashmir Files. In fact, the climax wasn't what you saw. Climax was different. Nobody would end a film on such a gut-wrenching, tragic climax. But then I said, everybody says that Indian audience can't consume good, solid stories. Therefore, unko thoda masala chahiye. We broke that myth and we said, no, we'll give them 3 hours of only gut-wrenching pain, agony, and despair, and let them see what human tragedy feels like. And then we said, instead of just showing them what happened, let's take them inside the scene. That's why the whole film is handheld, and you feel as if you are inside the scene, you are part of it. So in the end, when that little boy is shot, you feel you are being shot. There was a technique we used to shoot it that way. And I was very confident that this should work. If it had not worked, I'm telling you, I would have lost faith in this thing.
No, so when you say worked, it works obviously by getting people into the halls and they watched it. But did it work to actually affect change? The reaction, on the contrary, was this film should not be screened. Why are we seeing this film? It's a divisive film. It's going to pit Indians against Indians. It's being made promoted by the BJP, and of course, some BJP governments did say that this is essential watching and this, that, the other. And immediately you had the other side, or whatever you want to call it, saying that this film should not be screened, ban it, boycott it.
Oh yeah, so these are the same people. See, who's saying it? I hardly meet, though I do meet sometimes, yes, and I know exactly what people say. I'm fully aware of it. But then on an average, typical Indian middle class families, they have no problems with it. The problem is with the people who have problem with Vande Bharat also. Vande Bharat trains. So people who are critical of even those trains, people are critical of highways, people are critical of wherever India progresses, anything happens, they are critical of everything and they just say, no, this should not happen. The same people are also critical of this thing. If you go and ask couple of days ago, there is an actor, Prakash Raj, he had a nonsensical film. Okay, ye bakwas film hai, he said somewhere in Bangalore or somewhere. Though I found it very funny. But then he also says the same thing about Vande Bharat. He says the same thing about anything. He says Balakot never happened. He says surgical strike is fake. So they have their narrative, they have to play to that narrative. I don't care much about them. But if you have to make a balance sheet today, the impact of the film, and it's very important that every Indian must know about this. What can a film do? Film can only make people aware. But if a film can help change policy, then I think that is a real victory. So though I have hundreds of examples, let me give you one example. My phone is there, otherwise I would have read it out exactly. The new Speaker of US Congress, McCarthy. I was shooting in Lucknow for the vaccine war, and I've been getting a lot of requests from his office, maybe they have seen the film, to make a small video on the Kashmir issue. In 5 minutes, summarize it and send it to Mr. McCarthy's office. And I made one and sent it to them. Yesterday they sent me that write 3 extra lines, shoot 3 extra lines for that. I said, but why? I've said everything. He said, no, you have to write what is the action required because Mr. McCarthy is pushing to pass a resolution in US Congress on Kashmiri Pandit. In 7 states in US, their parliaments, their Congress, the state Congress, they have given us certificates, they have passed resolutions criticizing and condemning this. This is the first time it happened in US because so far you must have heard, like in Seattle, they said Kashmir should be free from India. They used to pass resolutions all the times in American state congresses that it should be free. When I went in 2020, there was a big hoarding in billboard in Times Square, which is world's most prestigious and most expensive billboard. It said Free Kashmir after Article 370. For the first time in the history, this 26th of January, the biggest billboard was on Kashmir Files, and for the first time, see, these are minute details because the critics don't know. In American, all the new generation of NRI Indians, जितने वहाँ रहते हैं, उनके बच्चे, they have never seen full map of Kashmir. Because in America, they show only the POK, they never show as part of India. For the first time, those children saw it. Even I didn't know that this is the case. So some parents sent me videos. Their child, the children started asking parents why this map is wrong. India's map is wrong. Because they had never seen this side of Kashmir. So these are very small changes. Besides that, Girja Tikku or BK Ganju, these 2 families, you have seen these
So let's understand how you can achieve more. A motivational talk by Mr. Shiv Khera. So let's put our hands together, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome on stage Mr. Shiv Khera. He's an author, educator, business consultant, and a much sought-after speaker who inspires and encourages each and every one of us. Please put your hands together and welcome on stage Mr. Shiv Khera.